And breaking news coming in at this hour, North Korea condemns the latest round of sanctions imposed by the United States, calls it an act of war. North Korea accuses America of trying to undermine improvement in inter-Korean relations during the Winter Olympics. The North Korean media said, and I quote, "The two Koreas have cooperated together and the Olympics was held successfully. But the US brought the threat of war to the Korean Peninsula with large-scale new sanctions on the DPRK ahead of the Olympics closing ceremony. A blockade by the United States would be considered an act of war," unquote. This is the big breaking story coming in at this hour. North Korea has condemned the latest rounds of sanctions imposed by the United States and has called it an act of war. North Korea has accused America of trying to undermine an important in inter-Korean relations during the Winter Olympics. The North Korean media said, and I quote, "The two Koreas have cooperated together and the Olympics was held successfully, but the US brought the threat of war to the Korean Peninsula with large-scale new sanctions on the DPRK ahead of the Olympics closing ceremony. A blockade by the United States would be considered an act of war," unquote. So how will the sanctions impact the situation in the Korean Peninsula? Here is a report.
On Friday, US President Donald Trump announced a fresh round of sanctions against North Korea. In his typical style, President Trump described the new set of sanctions as the heaviest package to be slapped on the isolated country.
I appreciate everything you've done. I do want to say, because people have asked, North Korea, we imposed today the heaviest sanctions ever imposed on a country before. And frankly, hopefully something positive can happen. We will see.
The latest round of measures seeks to crack down on several key shipping and trading companies of North Korea. The United States has restricted the movement and business dealings of one individual who is a Taiwanese passport holder. 27 companies and 28 ships in mainland China, Hong Kong, Taiwan and Singapore. Under the new sanctions regime, a freeze has been imposed on assets held by these firms, and US companies and individuals are prohibited from dealing with them. Besides this, the US is also proposing fresh UN sanctions to prevent North Korea from carrying out illicit trade through the maritime route to source oil and sell its coal. Last month, according to Intel reports, North Korea had shipped its coal to Russia, which was then routed to South Korea and Japan illegally, in a clear case of violation of US sanctions. President Trump, while announcing the sanctions, also did not forget to mention the military option, which he described as phase 2 of the Korean crisis, if the sanctions were to fail.
If the sanctions don't work, we'll have to go phase 2. And phase 2 may be a very rough thing, may be very, very unfortunate for the world. But hopefully the sanctions will work. We have tremendous support all around the world for what we're doing.
Ever since North Korea carried out its first nuclear test in 2006, the United States and a large number of international bodies, such as the United Nations and the European Union, have slapped crippling sanctions against Pyongyang. It will be interesting to see what impact these sanctions have on the Korean crisis in the weeks and months ahead. Bureau Report, WION.